إلى عرض تقديمي حول اعتماد وتطبيق خطط استدامة سلسلة التوريد والتدوير وكيفية مساهمتها في تحقيق رؤية 2030. تقدمه الأستاذة دينيس فيكتوريا، المدير العام لمبادرة استدامة سلسلة التوريد والتدوير في أكاديمية VCARE. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me welcoming Ms. Denice Viktoria.
You're going to make me hold it? Hello? Yes? Okay, I thought I was going to wear one, so I was... Hello? Okay, all right, sorry. I can speak really loudly, but maybe not this loud. So hello, and thank you. I first want to professionally thank all of you, ladies and gentlemen, and the organizers of this event for allowing me to share my passion with you. But then I also would like to personally thank the people of Saudi Arabia. This is my first visit to Saudi Arabia, and I have felt very warm greetings from everyone, and it's been very hospitable. So I thank you. And assalam alaikum to everyone. Oh, I messed it up, I think. All right, that's the worst picture ever. So the focus of sustainable supply chains, green supply chains, circular supply chains, that focus has really heightened post-pandemic. The operating environment for most companies globally is not the same that it was as little as 3 years ago. Carbon footprinting, CO2 emissions, resource reduction are common terms that you are hearing due to government mandates, legislation, and stakeholders demanding it. Across the time that I've spent at this conference, I've met some incredible solutions providers. I've listened to presentations on this stage from thought leaders, and I really get a sense that everyone is going in that direction. They're looking forward and trying to accomplish Vision 2030. But only once in the course of my entire time have I actually heard someone talk about how to put it all together. And let me explain. So all of you are incredible supply chain professionals, and a lot of the sustainability that you're doing is supply chain professionals trying to find a solution to a specific problem in your company, in your industry. I am a sustainability professional who has learned supply chain. And so I have overarching ideas based in scientific methodologies and tools that are used across the industry to put into supply chain issues for solutions. So how do we do that? Where do we go? How do we collectively take all of those solutions providers and move forward to 2030? When we look at the supply chain and we look at sustainability and circularity, I wanted you to shift your mindset just a little bit. Everything that I'm talking about is incohesive with everything that you're doing with your circular carbon economy and all the goals on 2030. But I want to change the way we think about things slightly, just a little bit, a little tweak to them. So when we talk about sustainability and we talk about supply chain, or sustainability in general, but specifically supply chain, we're talking about elimination and efficiency as being sustainability. So let me give you an example. I was on a panel with a great, something I didn't even know was an issue, but it was a great provider. And they were talking about idle time at the borders. So if we look at eco-efficiency, we're actually looking at what are they doing to burn less fuel, to create less emissions, and create that efficiency. That would be an example of eco-efficiency. But that's about inputs. So an input of the fuel, and the output is the emissions. When we're looking at elimination, we're looking at removing that fuel altogether and replacing it with green hydrogen, for instance. So that is the focus of sustainability. Circularity focuses on outputs. So we're not looking as much at the input of the fuel or lessening the fuel. We're looking at how we're going to, as you have captured in your circular carbon economy, that's your reuse, recycle, remanufacture. This is the output. This is circularity. Sustainability can be circular, circularity can be sustainable, sustainable cannot be circularity. Sustainable is working on inputs, not outputs as much. And the combination of these two is about future-proofing your economy. Now, when we're looking at inputs, outputs, what each process is doing, we need a tool for that. And we need a systematic way to look at it. So everything that I'm going to talk about is very systematic. It's about creating a system that will work for your industry and your industry and your industry. And it's customizable. It's not specific, where it will only work in retail. It will only work in the petrochemical industry. No, these tools are meant to be customized to whatever it is that you make or do or your service is. So the first tool that we are going to discuss is life cycle approach, life cycle thinking. And if you haven't thought about it before or been exposed to it, the life cycle is about starting, this doesn't, I don't think work too well, I don't think you can see that. It's starting at how a product or a service starts, and it's moving through its life cycle towards disposal. So let's say you have a product that has an extraction, and it goes into raw materials, and then there's some warehousing there, and it moves into manufacturing. Now, when you're looking at the life cycle, you're also looking at every step. So this would be, how is it going to be transported? How is it moved around in the warehouse? Then how is it then transferred to the manufacturer and to design and production, over to distribution, warehousing, customers, and disposal. So if you look down here, you've got your waste opportunities. This is your recycling, which is the output, again, the output of the manufacturing or the distribution. And then you also have your disposal, and as a diversion of recycling or remanufacturing. So this is taking a mountaintop view and looking down and drawing out or mapping out what's happening. Now, why would we do this? Well, we would do this so that we can map those inputs and outputs, because here's your opportunity. As I said, lots of solution providers, and I'm not here to provide the magic. I'm here to empower you to find the opportunities so that you know what solution works for you. And until you really understand what you make, what you waste, how things transfer, you cannot always find all of your opportunities. You may find what you think is your opportunity, but then when you map it out, you say, oh, what is that? Look at this big waste here. I hadn't considered this. A lot of manufacturers that I work with, they think their supply chain is very linear. They think it's very basic and very linear, and they're always surprised that it looks like a bowl of noodles at the end. They said, I had no idea it went to 3 different warehouses before it came to me. So what this is a very simple diagram, but what you are gonna do is you're gonna take every step, and you can do it for a group of products, a market space of products. It doesn't always have to be exactly, if you've got 2,000 SKUs, you might want to do it for a group. But what you're going to do is you're going to take your waste, or I'm sorry, not your waste, your water and your energy. So let's say you're mining limestone. You make this isn't for concrete or cement, but we can just use that as an example. You're mining a limestone, and so you've got a water and an energy input, and you've got your outputs, which is your wastewater, your emissions, and then it's going to be trucked. So your input would be fuel, and your output would be emissions, and then it's going to go to a manufacturing, and on that manufacturing, you've got water and energy as an input, and your outputs. And you're going to do this through every step of your process. Now here's the interesting thing. Let's say that Mr. Distributor here says, I have all this waste packaging. Dumpsters, and I'm trying to be zero waste, and I've got all this waste packaging. Sorry, wait. Over here. So in a traditional society, you would say, okay, or scenario, you would say, okay, well, we've got all this waste. Are we going to recycle it? Recycling's not the answer. It's one step above landfilling. You want to remove it as much as possible first, so that you have less to deal with when you get to the warehousing stage or distribution stage. So elimination is always better than control, meaning get rid of the input so that you don't have to figure out how to recycle it at the output. So let's say I'm here and I'm talking and I say, oh, this is ridiculous. How much is here? What am I going to do? Well, when you look at your map, whose input was this output? Where did this come from? Well, this came from XYZ manufacturer. So then you can create systems and processes with XYZ manufacturer to then say, I want to eliminate how much packaging I have. We're trying to be net zero. We want to get to this goal. And in order to get to that goal this year, I have to reduce my packaging by 20%. This is my roadmap, and I need to reduce it, and I need your help. So now we're able to look at our supply chain from the floor. We started at the mountain, we drew it out, and we now are on the floor where things are happening. Now, why is this important? This is important because whoever has to handle that packaging every day has a name, they have a job description, and you can find them, and you can tell them what the procedures are, and you can then create KPIs. And what do KPIs do? Well, they drive you closer to your goal. Because when you're just saying, I'm going to reduce my waste, I'm going to have net zero, whose job is that? Who's going to take care of that? Who's in charge of it? Who's going to quarterly measure that? But when you know what's happening here, you now can put a name and a face to it. So when we look at your circular economy framework, it fits right into this process-based approach where you're looking at input and output, because this is pretty much drawing out your inputs and outputs. Now, I've read and I also saw in Aramco's presentation that this is the framework that Saudi Arabia and Aramco is working from. And I want to add a little bit to this. I know that William McDonough did a lot of work with this, and he is a legend in sustainability. And so I want to consider that elimination should be here. So to the left of reduce should always be elimination, and that's getting rid of it from the start. Next, when we get into reduce, we have your typical energy efficiency and reducing emissions. But then when we get into reuse, recycle, and this is a remove. But in that case, I'd like to say innovation, because I feel like when I look at those technologies, direct air capture, stationary carbon capture, nature-based solutions, those are very innovative. they're not always the common marketplace for everybody that does CO2. And there's a lot more that in the next few years will be added to here. So we're going to be more innovative in that remove, and we'll not use the word remove, and we'll put elimination at the beginning, okay? Now, when we modify this diagram, you can see how it fits easily into what we were just talking about of the inputs and outputs. So instead of saying we have a goal, we're going to be net zero by 2030, and let's say net zero waste, we're now saying that's roughly 6 years. Because if you say by, that means before 2030, so December 31st, 2029, and that's 6 years away. So you got 6 years, you got 24 quarters, or 72 months. So now we have to break that goal down into incremental pieces to see how are we going to get there. Because just saying we're going to get there is never the solution. It's wishful thinking at that point. So now we've got, let's say, 24 quarters to get there. So we can map out what we're going to do from here. Now, some organizations, you can also add some carbon footprinting or waste footprinting or water footprinting on top of this so that you can then fill in your mounts, or even you can, on your, when you do your carbon footprinting, you would do per ton kilometer here for each of your materials so you can find waste. You would outline if it's truck, boat, truck, or airplane, or whatever. So what you're doing is you're just mapping it out. You can add more detail as needed. And then you're working within these parameters, these same parameters. So we're adding the systematic piece to it. Now, why is systematic important? It's because if we've got 24 quarters, we can't do really well these 6 quarters and then fall down for 5 quarters, because we've only got 21 or 24 to go. So we need to, every quarter, have more and more and more and move towards that, because we can mathematically figure out what we need to do to get there. So we want it to be systematized. We also want it to be plug and play, which may not mean a lot to a lot of you, because as long as you've had computers, you put a USB in and it recognized your mouse. But for some of us who had computers that are much older, you used to have to download the driver to get it to talk to the mouse. And what a plug and play option was so revolutionary, because no matter what you plugged in, it was going to work. So as I said, these tools are not just for petrochemicals or agriculture or retail or food and beverage industry. They will work across all industries. They'll also work across all suppliers. So when you have 6 suppliers, which we're going to talk about shortly, you will be able to systematize everybody and be able to drive your goal through their work. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So what we're doing essentially is we want to get rid of everything on this right side here, and we want to take it back around. So this is the carbon economy. It's putting that diagram that we saw in a more typical linear economy, circular economy diagram. But the number one thing I want you to think of, and I say this in my trainings and all of that constantly, elimination is better than control. Anytime you eliminate, you save money, you save time, you reduce risk, and so elimination is always your key. And although that diagram was nice and pretty on the circular economy probably looks a lot more like this. There's waste and product and, multiple product and everything moving around in a circle continuously. And the goal is continuously. Right now, not, but the goal is continuously. And so what this is showing is no manufacturer can create circularity in a silo, meaning that it takes everybody in this room and more to make the economy circular. This is why plug and play, as I'm calling it, systematizing that all your suppliers can follow the same system that you're following, that your competitors are following, that everybody's following together, is important because you need change in your market segment, not just for you, if you make a product or offer a service. So everybody's rolling around in this circle, and we've got some logistics and some recycling, and so everything's in here. And let me explain how that works. So in your circular economy, carbon economy framework, you've got recycling, I believe it's under recycling, polymers. So you've got polymers. And those polymers, let's pretend that those polymers are gonna go into a concrete mix. You've got a lot of construction out there. I love all the construction out there. I love building materials. But so you've got it coming into this loop. I'm sorry you can't really see my little pointer there very well, but coming into this circular economy circle that's spinning around, we're gonna imagine it's spinning, and coming into here is your polymer with the carbon that you're recycling. And that polymer is gonna get mixed with some cement and some limestone and some gypsum and some water, and it's now gonna be a product. So it's now riding in this loop, the circle, I guess you call it circle. But guess what? What's the service life of that construction? Because now you've got an end-of-life scenario. At the end of life, what happens to that, in this case, concrete? Ooh, concrete. You've got it. Is it recycled? Is it crushed up aggregate for something new? What is it? Because I don't want to say what's the point, but you're only half the circular economy if all you're doing is recycling that polymer once, it goes into the concrete, it's on the whatever for 25 years, you jackhammer it up and you put it in a landfill. What happened to the circular economy? So everything has to be input and output, because that polymer that was an output of the circular carbon economy now became an input. And that input needs to stay in production and manufacturing and all of that all the way through. So the point of that is each step in this creates value, and it also creates waste. So you're constantly having to deal with that waste. As all of those materials are riding around in that circle, you're gonna have value. You've got the recycled polymer, but you're also gonna have waste, because now that, at the end of its service life, if you don't have an infrastructure, is going to be a waste. And that's the CO2 from the fossil fuels. All right, so we briefly talked about if we got 6 years on this and 24 quarters and 72 months. This is multi-target and multi-year goal. Not easy, incredibly difficult. I think you can do it. I'm rooting for you. I think you can do it. But you're gonna have some other part of the system. You're gonna have more tools. So the life cycle thinking, the standing on the mountain, putting it out, going down to the floor, and mapping out what's happening. Now what? We've identified our opportunities. We talked to solutions providers. We are on target. But guess what? This all has to be in an action plan. And we've got to know where we're going. Where's our GPS? What's happening this quarter? And then we've got to define those metrics. And as I said, someone handling that packaging has a name and a job title. And we've got to give KPIs and have their manager or their supervisor working with that, because we're going to monitor those metrics Again, 24 quarters, not very long. We've got to monitor those metrics over time to make sure that we are on track. So when you're looking at this type of success, it's also going to breed multi-tier success. We are going to identify and seize the opportunities. We're going to drive collective progress. So how are we going to do that? So an organization, you could be the manufacturer and you've got your multi-tier suppliers below you, or you could be a tier 1 supplier, have your tier 2, tier 3. Well, they'd be your tier 1 and tier 2, but the suppliers below you. And when you're creating this system and you're incorporating it, sustainable procurement, all of that, you're actually putting everybody on the same field, and it's going down through your supply chain. It's creating metrics, it's creating accountability for not just you, but everybody below you. So you're driving everybody with you. You're driving your suppliers who could also be supplying competitors or other markets. You're bringing all of them with you. So it's a collective process. It's how you transform your organization. So I just read an article, interestingly enough, while I was here, on why don't sustainability initiatives work. And one of the biggest reasons was that here's our sustainability initiative, yay! And you know who it is, and you know who it is, or what it is, and you know what it is. Do the rest of us know? It needs to be embedded into what you do every day. And in order to do that, we're back to the KPIs, we're back to the job level. Because if I'm handling that and I know what the goal is, I can come up with innovation. Everyone loves to be recognized. So it actually transforms how your organization works, your manufacturing, your whatever it is works. Now, why else is this important? This multi-tier collective, bringing everybody up work. If you're a leader in your organization, if you're a leader, you are signing off on your company's objectives. Your strategic objectives are to make money, deliver value, reduce risk. How are you going to do that? What are you also doing? What is risk? Risk is removing the roadblocks that keep you from meeting your objectives. So if I'm training my suppliers and they're training their suppliers and everybody's getting training and my staff and we've got our initiatives, we're reducing risk. We're making people accountable for metrics that you're ultimately accountable for, but we're bringing that all in so that it is embedded into what you do. So as a leader, your job just got a whole lot easier. Since it's plug and play, as I'm calling it, then you can take those metrics, you can take those initiatives, you can take your successes, and now you just copy and paste across everything. Want to tell your stakeholders what you're doing? Want to need to publish an ESG report? Guess what? You have hard numbers. You're able to say what you're doing and be able to show it. I always say that none of my clients that I work with had, before me, greenwashed on purpose. What they did is they made some goals, they were a little loose about meeting those goals, marketing got really excited about those goals, and in the end, when they didn't meet them, they didn't tell the stakeholders they didn't meet them. And so somebody then came back and said, wait a minute, you said this. So they get called out for greenwashing. So when you've got ESG and you've got reporting, you can add all of these things in because they're the same. They're the same. That if you told me I'm going to create this map to create eco-efficiency and net zero, or I need to report on something for ESG, I'm going to tell you it's the same process. And it's not even a process that is becoming or is currently, you know, nice to have. So this kind of stuff, when I started 10 years ago, nice to have. We're a good company, we're a good global citizen. This is nice to have. Right now, Scope 3 reporting mandatory in a lot of places. Measurement isn't voluntary. Circularity passports are being established globally. I sit on several global committees for that. Carbon footprinting is required in certain places, and you have to map your supply chains for that. There's no other way to do it. ESG reporting here in Saudi, 2017, new corporate governance rules. Look at 2023, you've been busy. 2023 says you guys have been busy on ESG. It's still voluntary, but it's not gonna be voluntary forever. And then I watched one presentation from Aramco, and they listed out 5 sustainable development goals that they are able to contribute to. Actually, the oil and gas industry contributes to all 17. They just don't do it directly. So for instance, let's say you are going to use sustainable consumption and, there it is, responsible consumption and production. That's one of the goals that they listed. I don't remember them all. But in that one, that's a direct goal. They absolutely contribute that. But did you know that sustainable or responsible consumption and production also indirectly is mapped to peace and justice, water, clean water, life below water, life on land. They are all indirect of responsible consumption and production. So just by working on your goals, you're actually affecting more than you know. And currently you have 50% progress on your SDGs. So 2030 again, 6 years. So in conclusion, I am here to empower you. I want you to succeed. I want you to meet these goals and to create what you need to create as a system to get them. Vision 2030, and becoming a circular economy, a circular carbon economy. I want to be the first one to say, I really am cheering for you. I want that to happen. As a model to the world, that is an amazing accomplishment. Supply chain contribution is key. You cannot do it without it. And I believe that if you use systems thinking, as we have done here, or illustrated here, you're actually going to be able to more quickly, easily, and more efficiently get to those targets. Shukran.